I hope you're having a great day. Today I want to talk about kids' health. I want to talk about the innumerable questions that we get from parents all across the world asking general questions about their children. For example, my kids don't like eating green vegetables. My kids are fussy eaters. I have to chase my kids to finish their meals. My kids are losing weight, my kids are gaining weight, and all of these problems. Now, I want to talk in general about a couple of things that in my practice over the last couple of 8 years, we see as commonalities between patterns that parents put their kids through and patterns that their kids go through. So the number one rule when it comes to children and food, do not force your children to eat food. Now we have to be smart enough and use vitamin C, which is common sense, to understand that if your child is sick and isn't eating food, that's the time you take medical help and you understand. There are certain cases where your kids have to be monitored on the kind of food that they eat. But if your child is active, if your child is healthy, and you are still forcing your children to eat their food, they are going to develop a bad relationship with food. They are going to start rebelling against the food that you force them to eat. So you need to look, my child's active, my child's sleeping well at night, my child is taking part in social activities, going to school and all of that stuff. Children are very intuitive. There are times when their bodies are still eliminating and they're not hungry. And they will not want to eat just because we have meal timings like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, which is good to build discipline for eating at the right times and eating as a family together. Sometimes a child may not be hungry at lunchtime. Sometimes a child may not be hungry at breakfast time. And you need to identify this and not force your child to eat. At that point, the child's body is in elimination. It's not in the building phase. Every human being has two phases, adults and children, and the elderly as well. There's an elimination phase where your body's still eliminating and digesting the previous meal. And then there's a building phase when your body's asking you for food, nutrients, vitamins, minerals to build. So there's an elimination and building phase. Respect that phase for your children. I'm yet to come across a child who died of starvation because he missed one meal or he missed two meals. Sometimes a child will miss two meals. That is okay. Your child will eat again when they are hungry. You see, they're following the cycle of nature, not the cycle that we've defined as human beings. So when their body asks for food, that's the time they're going to be hungry. And when we keep the biological clock in line with nature, which means you kind of fix your meal timings for your children, they will automatically start to feel hungry at that time. But when we keep changing their eating timings, that's going to be a problem. Then they're going to feel hungry at different times, and they're going to feel full at the time their meal is supposed to be. So that's the number one rule. Do not force your children to eat. Sometimes when they're sick, this is for adults as well, we have to understand that the body, the immune system is automatically dropping the appetite of the child because it wants to use energy to heal the body, not energy for digesting food that it doesn't need at that point. So we got to be mindful and alert that we identify what our children are going through at that point and accordingly plan their meal. We don't work from insecurity, we don't work from fear, we work from common sense. Number two, most children who suddenly lose interest in fruits and vegetables and normal wholesome foods, you need to identify the fact that you probably fed them a lot of sugar and a lot of junk. Sugary foods and junk food is designed to trick their receptors and create a cycle of addiction. The same with adults. Why are you so addicted to sugar? Why are you so addicted to junk and processed food? It's not your behavior. It's your receptors that start this vicious cycle of addiction. So imagine your children. We are completely grown adults. We have the ability to use our motor, our sensory skills, every possible sense in our body to make a decision. And yet we struggle with addiction to sugar and processed foods. Imagine feeding a child under the age of 5 or 4 when their skills are not yet developed to make a logical decision or even understand how bad these foods are for them. So the moment the tongue gets a taste of that sugar or that salt, and that connects to your receptors in the brain, your fruits and vegetables and dals and pulses isn't going to be as attractive or tasty as the junk food that their receptors in the brain are expecting. So we have to understand that you want to feed them clean, wholesome food. There are ways to give them sugar in the form of jaggery, give them treats in the form of healthy treats and all of that stuff. But once they start the addiction process, that's when you're going to see your kids throwing tantrums, rebelling against food that doesn't taste good anymore. So you have to understand that what you feed them is also the outcome of their, behavior with fruits and vegetables and all of that stuff. I'm not saying your child has to be strict or you have to be strict and only give them green vegetables and fruits and nuts and seeds. No, allow for variance at the right age. The right age is when they can understand, when you can give them something like junk or an ice cream and also explain to them that this is once in a way, because they can comprehend and understand that this is not food. This is a treat which you get once in a way because it isn't good for your health if you do too much of it. If you give a child who cannot understand this, you're setting them up for disaster. Number 3, feed your own kids. You need to understand from the time your child is an infant to maybe the age of 7 or 8, there is an emotional bond between a parent feeding their child. If you have servants feeding your children all the time, they are going to have a bad relationship with food, number 1. They're going to learn manipulation to get out of eating habits, because when you are bonded, a mother will relate to this. When you are breastfeeding your child, the connection, the warmth, the emotion, that creates the bonding between the mother and the child. It provides comfort, it provides security to the child. It's as simple as that. So please, once in a way it's fine, but this habit of servants feeding children all the time has to stop. And you will find that your children have a better relationship with food and even with you. Eat your meals together. We need to understand that when we eat our meals together, you can draw a culture of health in your family. So you understand there are 2 meals or 3 meals in a day where the family comes together. If possible, all meals, if not, at least 1 meal where it's a family culture to eat together. It is so important to do this because then children see the kind of food that you are eating. Okay, and children do what you do. They don't do what you tell them to do. They do what you do. You lead by example. So if you have a plate that looks like a rainbow and you have a little bit of vegetable, they may not eat it the first time. They may not eat it the second time, but they are constantly observing you. At some point, they're going to understand that my parents eat this, so it is good for me. But if you try to force them or you try to get your servant to force them to eat vegetables, it's never going to work. They're going to have a bad relationship with food. The next thing is understand that children go through different phases of eating vegetables and fruits. Sometimes a child doesn't touch any fruits and all of a sudden they're in a new phase where they start enjoying fruits, and likewise with vegetables. Your child may have demonstrated by now that they love green leafy vegetables, and 6 months down the line they will not touch it again. They may find a new food. So we need to respect that there are phases that children go through the same way adults go through different phases as well. So we can't expect our children to behave a certain way when we don't do that ourselves. We go through phases, children go through phases. Observe, be mindful, do not force them. We need to teach our children and ourselves that food should never forget the fact that food is energy to the human body. Food is information to your genes. When children grow up to learn that food is entertainment and food is a reward, so every time they get a good grade or they're good, you give them an ice cream or you give them food, the subconscious mind begins to believe that, oh, when I'm good, I'll get food. So you don't see, your mindset doesn't see food as energy, food as nutrition. And then you don't build a culture of good health when you have that kind of mindset. Every meal for a child has to be balanced. It's very simple, which means when you look at the meal or the snack that you're giving your child, it should have some amount of good carbohydrates, a little bit of protein, and a little bit of good fats. Every meal should have this. If you're giving your child a carbohydrate snack alone, okay, it's not going to be completely assimilated in the body. It's not going to be good nutrition. You may say it's a good carb, yes, but at every mealtime you need a little bit of carbohydrate, protein, and fat, because you see these are macronutrients that work together in the human body. We become so used to isolating a carbohydrate, isolating a protein, isolating a fat, and thinking just because Google says fats are great for you, protein is great for this, we think it's going to work that way in the human body. The human body works on intelligence, biology, physics, chemistry, which means all these macronutrients together in your child's body will contribute together to growth, repair, height, the right weight, the right hormonal balance, everything, including the mental development. Activity. If you look at the amount of children today who, they have sedentary lifestyles, television, Xboxes, video games, that's not a bad thing. It's a bad thing if it's taking over your child's life and compromising on activity. Children grow with activity. So many mothers and fathers reach out about their children not growing in height and all of that stuff. The only one thing that most of those parents have to change, most of them, is their child's activity. When you are active, you produce HGH, which is human growth hormone, which is why we say exercise is good for us. The more we exercise, the more HGH we produce. When we produce HGH, that is what is going to grow your child. So a child who's sitting and has a sedentary lifestyle is not producing HGH. There is no amount of protein in the world that is going to make your child grow. They need activity, and that is natural to a child. You put a child in a playground and you'll see they will play and play and play until they are completely tired. And in most cases, you got to stop them from playing to take them back home. They have this endless energy that has to be spent. That is the growth phase of a child. Activity, activity, activity. If your child has a sedentary lifestyle, that is your responsibility. You got to take accountability for that, and you need to change that for your life. A sedentary lifestyle will decrease their immunity, because if HGH goes down, which is the growth hormone, they have low immunity as well. So growth and immunity. So many children today with low immunity, and parents want superfoods, and parents want medicines, and parents want nutraceuticals and supplements and vitamins and minerals. Doesn't matter. It's not going to improve your child's immunity if they don't have the right activity. Activity boosts immunity, period. Sleep boosts immunity. Sleep boosts growth, height, development of the brain, development of the musculoskeletal system in your child. So when you look at children's programs today, they have so many extracurricular activities that their sleep is compromised. They come home late, so they're having their meals later, they're going to sleep later, and still waking up early in the morning. Nothing is worth compromising your child's sleep, because all the magic happens while they sleep. Their growth, repair, everything that I just said, including their immunity. That's why infants sleep for 16 hours in a day, and as they grow, it becomes 12, and then 10, and then 9, and then 8. The same problems happen with adults, but we're not going to talk about that right now. Allow your children to express how they feel. Allow them to talk about their feelings. There are so many children today who are growing up with this negative peer pressure because they're not allowed to express themselves. No one wants to hear them. Make time for your children to talk about how they feel, not just about how their day was or how their party was or any of that stuff. It's got to be deeper, because every adult human being is struggling with emotions in themselves. They need to be heard. I think every human being needs to be heard today, and that's the biggest healing. So think about your children as well, because they're living in a world which is full of peer pressure. They're in friend circles, they're in groups. You don't know if they're feeling inadequate, you don't know their self-esteem. Give your children a platform to express themselves. That's the first healing. And when you give them that platform of open communication, where you are only listening and not advising and not shouting and not doing any of that, you just let them express. You give them a safe space to express to you. In the future, they go through problems, they know I have a safe space. I'll come and express over there. Like every adult has that one special friend who they feel safe with to express everything. Like that, you need to create that safe space with your child. We also need to understand, and this is so important, between the age of 2 and 6, that is the phase of your child's life where they absorb every single thing they see and every single thing that they hear, basically. You have to understand this. So they are observing the environment around them, okay? How you live, all of these things, how you behave. They are looking at your behavior. They are watching how you eat, and everything that you say to them, or you think they're not listening, they can't hear what you're saying, is going into their subconscious. So this is a good thing and a bad thing. It's a bad thing for all parents and all people who tell their children they're useless, they're fat, compare them with other children academically or physically, tell them they don't deserve stuff in life. That's going to be in their subconscious. And many parents today know that most of their issues are related to their childhood. So you want to make sure you're not creating that same problem for your children. The good part about it is it's like a sponge. This is the time you can induce values into them. The things that you want them to learn. Good things, compassion, kindness, good behaviors, all of these things. So there's the bad and the good. Now you can use the good to put whatever you want your child to know between the age of 2 and 6. After the age of 2 and 6, the frequency of the brain changes, which means they're of the age now where they have the skill to react, to rebel, to talk back, to logic, to reason. The absorption phase is literally almost over. So between 2 and 6, this is the most important phase of your child's life. So if you're looking at inducing values of health, good foods, all of these things in between 2 and 6 is the time that you're going to do it. We spoke about sleep. I want to talk about the water intake. Very important for a child. Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Because we grew up probably without so much exposure to air conditioners, so we were out playing in the sun, sweating. We drank more water automatically. But today, children, they live in an air-conditioned environment. Most of them, their schools are air-conditioned, their cars are air-conditioned, so they don't feel thirsty. That doesn't mean that their body is not dehydrating. You still got to make sure they have the right amount of water, because water is required for the growth of all cells in the human body, adult or child. And of course, vitamin D3 levels. You want to make sure if your children are complaining of knee pain and leg pain when they wake up or muscle cramping, you want to be sure that they're getting the right amount of vitamin D3. So speak to your pediatrician about that, because we don't get sunlight today. So most adults have a deficiency of vitamin D3. Most children also have a vitamin D3 deficiency. And that's a huge problem from the point of view of their bones, their musculoskeletal system, and including their hormonal development, especially for women. So that's it when it comes to children. We have to understand that it is lifestyle. No pumpkin seeds or no leaf of lettuce or arugula is going to change the health of your child overnight. It's going to be lifestyle that you create for them, the environment, the culture of health, doing things together. There's nothing wrong with an ice cream. There's nothing wrong with an occasional chocolate or a dessert, but fit it into the discipline of a week. You have a good week. You can have a reward day on Sunday. Let your children look forward to that and understand why they're getting it. Even if you're giving them a dessert, why are they getting a dessert? Because they've probably eaten well during the week. If they're eating something bad, pair it with something good. So if they want to have something which isn't too good for them, say, okay, select one thing that's good that you can eat. So if they say, I'm going to have a fruit first and then have my treat, that's great. You're making them understand that you're putting good nutrition in your body and not so good. There's a trade-off. So they learn to reason and they learn to plan for their future. It's as simple as that. Have a great day, everyone. Until next time, eat smart, move more, sleep right, and breathe deep.